Hello everybody and welcome into the Big Hit. I'm Jared Brown. I am going to be your temporary host as our normal host Sarah Moltz is stuck in traffic right now and can't be here on time. But for today we're going to start out with our NHL season preview where we're going to go from conference to conference and division to division and break down each division and who we think is going to end up the division champ. And we're going to end it up with some individual player awards that we're going to predict at the end of the season. After that, we're going to jump into our MLB preview, our MLB postseason preview, where me, Elliot Hicks, and Sarah Moltz are going to break down the upcoming MLB postseason and give you predictions on who's going to advance to the conference series and eventually the World Series. So stay tuned. This is the Big Hit. And welcome back into the Big Hit. I'm Jared Brown here, joined with Elliot Hicks and Jake Taylor. Today we're going to be breaking down the NHL season and preview it as it has just started a couple days ago. So we're going to start right at home in the Metropolitan Division. So you ready, guys?
Yeah,
all right.
So
the Capitals have won the President's Trophy in 2017 with 55 wins. But will the Capitals continue to have such great regular season success? And will the Capitals be able to translate that success into the postseason this year?
You know what? I think the Washington Capitals every single year are built for success. They're the best regular season team the NHL has seen in years. I mean, back-to-back President's Trophy winners, you can't beat that. And I'm not sure they'll get the President's Trophy again this year, but they'll be runners for it. I don't think they want it because it haunts them every single year. They're the favorites to go into the Stanley Cup, and they lose every single year. So I don't think they're going to want the President's Trophy, but I do think they're contenders for it.
Yeah, I almost feel a little bit bad for Washington because they won that President's Trophy and the Pens have knocked them out each of the last 2 years on their way to Stanley Cup victories. The Capitals, even though their 2-year window that was self-proclaimed by their general manager a couple years back, that's over, but they still have Alex Ovechkin. He's still on the top of his game, shows no signs of slowing down. You still have Braden Holtby, arguably the best goaltender in the game, in net. And you still have a lot of great players in Washington. They did lose a couple of key guys. Nate Schmidt going to the Vegas Golden Knights in the expansion draft was a big loss. But I think Washington is definitely going to be a great team. Whether they win the President's Trophy or not, I'm not sure. But they'll definitely be Stanley Cup contenders all the way throughout the year.
Yeah, we're not biased here on the Big Hit. But I hate the Washington Capitals. You know what? It's just a shame. The general manager last year said if this is the year to win the Stanley Cup, it's this year. They lost. And they haven't made it past the second round, the Alex Ovechkin era. I don't think they're going to do it this year. They're worse off than the last 2 years, and they're going to have to run into the Pittsburgh Penguins. It's inevitable, unless they get knocked out in the first round. But they need to do a service to Braden Holtby and ship him out of there.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see how this year goes. I think the Capitals, if they have one more year where they can't quite get it done, then you start to rebuild. But they still have a lot of their core intact. I think they can go for it one more time.
All right, guys. Well, speaking of the Pittsburgh Penguins, the Penguins are back-to-back defending Stanley Cup champs, but they've lost key players this season, such as Nick Bonino. So do the Penguins have what it takes to get a three-peat done, or did they lose too much talent in the offseason?
I'm going to have to say absolutely not. Even though the Penguins, they've done an absolutely great job the last 2 years. I don't know if I want to say an underrated team because whenever you have Sidney Crosby, Evgeny Malkin, Phil Kessel, all the talent that they had, you can't really be underrated. But for them to win back-to-back Stanley Cups was very surprising. I really don't think they can get it done this year. Losing Bonino, they never really filled that hole of the third-line center. Even losing Marc-Andre Fleury was a big hit, no pun intended. Even though Antiniemi is a great backup, they're not going to have that. They're not going to have that goaltending behind them this year. And of course, that was huge last year, having Fleury basically carry them all the way through the regular season 2 years ago, and then in the first half of the playoffs this past year. The Penguins would be a great team. They may be able to pull off a President's Trophy. Definitely would be competitive in the playoffs. Will not win 3 in a row Stanley Cups.
I'd have to disagree with you because I think the Penguins, although losing Nick Bonino, who was key to their Stanley Cup run 2 years ago, wasn't that big of a factor this past year.
That's true.
And they did it without Chris Letang. Their defense, they say the defense is shaky when we lost Trevor Daley, Ron Hainsey, who wasn't a very big acquisition, but we got in Matt Hunwick, and Chris Letang's back. Chris Letang is upper echelon. He is the cream of the crop of defensemen. I think the NHL nowadays, you need a high-scoring defenseman. I mean, look at Erik Karlsson, PK Subban, Brett Burns. You need someone like that on your team. And I think where they lack a third-line center, they gain in Chris Letang coming back. Hopefully he can have a healthy season. Jake Gunsel, he only came in really in this later half of the season last year, and I think he's just elite, and these younger guys are going to keep stepping up here. And if you're playing next to Sidney Crosby, I think you can just have to put the puck in the back of the net when he's just so good. It's almost hard to be bad.
Yeah. And I mean, as nice as it would be to have Chris Letang have a full healthy season, how often have we seen that?
Yeah,
he's been injury prone all his career,
Yeah.
even having injuries like what knocked him out last year, even having a stroke a couple of seasons ago. You can't really rely on Letang to give you a full year anymore, even though he's still playing at a high echelon. And I just fear that you're going to have those games in the middle of December where you're going to have to move Jake Gunsel to center because guys like Greg McKegg, who's expected to win that third center spot, is just not going to cut it. I feel like it might be kind of similar to 2 seasons ago where the top 6 was almost immaculate with guys like Crosby and Malkin, and then the bottom 6 just couldn't get anything done. I really fear that could be what happens for the Penguins this season.
Yeah.
Well, with all this Pittsburgh talk, we have to be fair. We go to IUP, so let's talk about the Flyers. They spent last postseason from the outside looking in. What do the Flyers have to do to address their playoff issue, I guess is the way to word it? How do they get into the playoffs this year?
I believe they have to be more consistent. They always get on winning streaks here and there, and then they'll get cold and they'll get hot. And I think it all stems from Claude Giroux, their captain. He usually he's one of the best players in the NHL, and when he doesn't produce as well as he should, I think it affects the whole team all the way down. They don't have too much depth on that team. I mean, maybe it'd be a stretch if they win the Stanley Cup. I mean, if their goal is to make the playoffs, I think it's possible. But to go anywhere further, I think Claude Giroux has to surpass Voracek, who's always above him in scoring these last few years, and he's more consistent. Claude Giroux he'll get hot in November or early in the season, and then later in February. But Voracek's consistently scoring. I think it needs to be a whole team effort. And Nolan Patrick, their first-round pick this year, may be able to help that, but we'll have to see.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you on the Giroux point. Not quite a consistent enough captain in terms of scoring. Really affects the whole team. But as you mentioned with Nolan Patrick, that's definitely a big addressing a need there, being lucky enough to get that second overall pick in the lottery, and then being lucky enough to have a guy like Nolan Patrick fall to them. I mean, he's not a kind of Austin Matthews, Connor McDavid. I almost said Connor McGregor. Connor McDavid generational type talent, but he should be a very good center for them. And I think you're going to see the Flyers and Coach Dave Haxtell make some noise this season.
All right, rapid fire. Who's winning the Metropolitan?
Washington Capitals.
I'm going to have to go Pittsburgh.
All right, now let's move over to the Atlantic, where we have the Senators, the Atlantic Division Eastern Conference. They represented them in the Eastern Conference Finals. Do they have what it takes to move forward as divisional champs, or will the Canadiens repeat as divisional champs?
The Senators absolutely have what it takes. I think they will win the division. The Canadiens, without Carey Price, what are they? And you could say the same for the Senators. Erik Karlsson, their words can't describe how talented he is and how essential he is to the team's success. But I believe if Craig Anderson comes back, he won't have a year like he had last year. Well, I'll be surprised if he does. And if he comes back even playing average to his regular game, I think they have a strong shot to win the division for sure.
Yeah, Ottawa really surprised everyone last year. I think Craig Anderson had a great year, guys like Karlsson playing on that high level. But I think you're going to see Montreal come back. Good goaltending is everything, and I think if Carey Price gets another full season under his belt, Montreal's going to take that division.
Yeah, they're consistent. They're never bad, and they're always cup contenders, so you can't count them out. So I wouldn't be surprised if they win it again.
All right, well, let's move over to Boston, where the Bruins, they took a pretty early exit from the postseason to end what was a pretty lackluster season for Boston fans. So what do the Bruins need to change in order to get back into the Stanley Cup on where we're used to them being?
Defensive depth, I think. Their offense is good. Brad Marchand, finished, fourth in the scoring race last year. And Bergeron won the most Selke awards of all time. So I think they're pretty good up there. David Pastrnak coming in, Charlie McAvoy, who could win the Calder Trophy this year for Rookie of the Year. I think they're good right there. Tuukka Rask, solid goaltender as well, but defense, Chara, he's getting old. He doesn't move, skate as well as he used to back when they won the Cup. And I think better defense, which it won't be hard to do. They just have some guys step up, and I think they could make a deep run, actually.
Yeah, I kind of have to echo your sentiment with Boston. Having a goaltender like Tuukka Rask, again, good goaltending will take you anywhere, as we've seen in the past quite often. But they really can't rely on guys like Zdeno Chara anymore. They're getting old. They have a lot of good talent, but we'll have to see how they do in the first half of the season to really see if they can contend for a postseason spot.
All right, and now let's talk about the Red Wings. You can't talk about the Atlantic without talking about the Red Wings. They missed the postseason for the first time in 25 years last year. What do the Red Wings need to do to get back into the playoffs?
You know what? I don't think they'll get back in the playoffs anytime soon. I think they need to rebuild. And I think it starts with Dylan Larkin. I think he's a very transcendent talent. And I think they need to build the team, not so much around him, but get him going more or less. They need players to accent him and better goaltending, I feel. The Detroit Red Wings, it wasn't a surprise. You can't go to the playoffs every single year. You're going to have some years where you have to rebuild, and I think these next few are going to be that for the Detroit Red Wings.
Yeah, for you fans of the Detroit Red Wings, I hope you enjoyed this last 25-year streak of the postseason because you're not going to get any more anytime soon. This is one of the worst teams in the National Hockey League, and I think they're going to stay that way for a good couple of years. Guys like Dylan Larkin are great to have in this rebuilding process, but they are in a really bad situation with the salary cap right now. A lot of money tied up into a lot of bad players for a lot of years. So Detroit is in for a nice long rebuild.
Yeah.
All right. Once again, quick answer. Who's your favorite to win this division?
I have to say Montreal.
I have to say Erik Karlsson. Oh, the Ottawa Senators.
All right. Well, that's all the time we have for the Eastern Conference. You beautiful people back at home, don't go anywhere because we'll be right back with the Western Conference. Yeah.
That was good.
Good work. Hello, everybody, and welcome back into the Big Hit. We just previewed the Eastern Conference of the NHL. Now we're going to jump across the United States to the Western Conference. We're going to start out in the Central, where the Blackhawks are the defending Central Division champs. Do you two expect them to repeat as Central Division champs next year, or no?
You know what? I think the Chicago Blackhawks are good, and they're still going to be good with Corey Crawford, Jonathan Toews, Patrick Kane, Duncan Keith back there. They got Sawed back, and they're built to be good. They're built to be contenders every single year. But the Nashville Predators, after what we saw from them, although they were the last seeded team to enter the playoffs last year, they swept the Chicago Blackhawks first round. They swept them. They made a mockery of their entire dynasty, their 3 championships. They said, "Get out of here. It's time to." PK Subban runs division now. I think they really got but Nick Bonino here, key assets to the team. I think Chicago Blackhawks have met their match.
They may well have, but I mean, that was absolutely shocking to see Chicago go down in 4 games last year. But they still have all the talent in the world. Patrick Kane is still a great winger. Jonathan Toews is one of the top centers in the game. Of course, good goaltending, as is always preached. Corey Crawford in the back of the net, I think, is great. The Predators will definitely be a huge threat to the Blackhawks winning this division again. I think that bringing Brandon Saad back was a little bit of an overreaction. Artemi Panarin really seemed to have a lot of chemistry with Chicago, and to ship him out to Columbus was kind of a strange move and maybe a bit of an overreaction from that sweep last year. But either way, Chicago is going to be a good team, and I think it is a 2-horse race basically for this Atlantic Division title between Chicago and Nashville.
Yeah.
So you keep talking about Nashville, guys, but you can't forget Nashville came into the Stanley Cup playoffs as the lowest seeded team in the playoffs. So are they really a threat to the Chicago Blackhawks, or are the Predators just the team that caught fire at the right time last year?
You know what? I think about that all the time, but I firmly believe if Ryan Johansson still was healthy in that Stanley Cup final, it would have been a whole different story. And Pekka Rinne, he fell apart. I mean, the performance like that in Pittsburgh, he's never going to do that again, I promise you that. He is top-tier goaltender, and, we've said it how many times this show, a team, it stems from the goalie. The goalie is the backbone of the team. And I think Pekka Rinne, he's almost unbeatable. He's good year after year, but next to Braden Holtby, I say behind Braden Holtby, Pekka Rinne is the second best goaltender in the league. And you have PK Subban, Victor Arvidsson, Ryan Johansson, Nick Bonino. You have all these players here that are now built and know what they have the taste. They know what success feels like now, and I think they want to get back out there and be successful at early in the season. That way they win the division, get home ice advantage in the playoffs, because they won every single game at home except 2 in the playoffs, or 3. And I think the fact that they were the lowest seed and they had to go travel on the road more often, I think it will really benefit them if they can do well in the regular season to maintain home ice advantage in the playoffs.
Yeah, I pretty much have to echo a lot of what you said there. Nashville is definitely built to contend for years to come. I wonder how they're going to adapt. Of course, if they're going to be contending for the division, they're not going to be that underdog anymore. I wonder how they're going to play without having that mentality, being a top dog rather than the underdog. But Nashville is a great team. They're going to be contending for a good while. And again, it'll be an exciting 2-horse race in the Central Division here in the Western Conference.
All right, so if you look at the Central Division, you said it's a 2-horse race. But, you still have the Jets, the Stars, the Avalanche. Do any of those teams have a chance to enter the divisional race, or are they just going to get left behind by the Predators and Blackhawks?
Definitely not get left behind. Colorado, maybe, yeah. They're still rebuilding, and they have Nathan McKinnon and Landeskog, so I think they're going to be good down the road. The Stars, that's a interesting topic there. I think Tyler Seguin and Jamie Benn are the top duo. They're up there. Jamie Benn, in particular, I think when he gets going, people forget that he won the Art Ross Trophy 2 years ago for the scoring title. And I think if he can get going, he really starts to score goals, get points up on the board, because they were real bad with goal differential last year. They have Ben Bishop back there in net, Jamie Benn scoring goals. I think they won't be certainly as bad as this past year. And the Winnipeg Jets, I can't praise Mark Scheifele enough. I think Mark Scheifele is one of the best players in the NHL. These last 2 seasons, he's had the most even strength goals in the entire NHL. I mean, you can't deny that skill. I mean, even strength points. I mean, he's on the power play, so you put him out there, even strength. He's getting the job done. Patrick Laine came up to be elite. He's the man back there. And Dustin Byfuglien. I think they got Steve Mason in net now, Connor Hellebuck. I really think the Winnipeg Jets can do some damage this year, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, you had a lot of good points there. All these teams are going to be pretty decent. They all are going to have their own time. But all of it's pretty much irrelevant, because Chicago and Nashville are still worlds ahead of them.
You think? I think the Winnipeg Jets could be a sleeper. I don't know if they're going to upset them, but I think they're going to surprise some people. I don't think they're going to.
You may have sleepers there, a couple of wild card contenders, but in terms of the division title, it's just not happening.
All right. Well, one last question about the Central before we move over to Pacific. Who's walking away with it? Is it going to be Nashville or Chicago?
I got to go Chicago.
I got to go Nashville.
All right, well, let's jump into the Pacific. No pun intended there. The Ducks are the defending champ, despite having less wins than the Edmonton Oilers last season. Do the Ducks have the magic to repeat it again in this Pacific?
They do. They have what it takes. They do. Like I said, every year, these top teams in the NHL, it's much like the other top teams in any other sports. They're dominant for long periods of time. I think the Ducks are one of them, and they have a great captain, Ryan Getzlaf. But I feel like the young surge from the Edmonton Oilers can really give them some issues this year, and I'm interested to see what happens, actually.
Yeah, this will be another real interesting division race. I think Anaheim still has a lot of talent. They're still going to be in the hunt for the postseason and for a Stanley Cup for the next few years. But I think this young blood in Edmonton is really going to give them a challenge this year.
Yeah, if Cam Talbot shows up like he did last year for Edmonton, I think they have the edge on Anaheim there. So, but Anaheim, they're the powerhouse over there. So, I mean, to be the best, you got to beat the best. So Edmonton has their hands full.
Yeah, Anaheim's the team that's been there and done that, and they're going to need a really good young Edmonton team to be able to beat them with no real big marquee postseason experience, that kind of thing.
All right, well, you both brought up the Young Guns of Edmonton, but I can't believe neither of you mentioned Connor McDavid. Do Connor McDavid and the Oilers have what it takes to even be in the Stanley Cup discussion this year, or are they just priming for that in the future?
With Connor McDavid, I think he is a very good player, if not the best. However, I think the NHL itself is really advertising Connor McDavid. I don't think it's good for his personal career. He is so young, and they're pushing everything on him. I mean, yeah, he won the Art Ross because he scored the most points, but they gave him the Hart Trophy for MVP, although Sidney Crosby is just right up there. There's no one better than Sidney Crosby. And the Ted Lindsay Award he also won. He swept it away. He's on the cover of NHL 18. He's got all the commercials. Everyone's saying he is. And now the new rankings came out, and they ranked Connor McDavid the best player in the NHL. And I think that might be too much for his young career. I think he needs to be focused on his own personal. He's the youngest captain in NHL history. I think he needs to focus on his team and getting his team to where they need to be, and that is in the Stanley Cup final. And this pressure on him may be a little bit too much. Yeah,
the entire battle with Crosby and McDavid has been quite interesting to watch. Crosby made it through all that pressure. He's got 3 Stanley Cups now. You were wondering before this back-to-back run if Crosby would even be able to hold up to his end of the bargain. That's what people expected. With McDavid, the Oilers, they have a lot of good young talent. They don't quite have the goaltending. Cam Talbot, he's been good for the past couple of years, but he's not to an elite level, and I don't think he ever will be. But Connor McDavid is definitely a great player. And honestly, he should be able to single-handedly carry this team into the playoffs, and where they go from there is up to anyone's guess. But I think that Connor McDavid will be just fine. He'll keep winning awards, and he'll keep bringing the young fan base to the NHL. And keep doing well.
I agree, but Leon Draisaitl, a huge key player there for the Edmonton Oilers last year. They were the best duo in the NHL, finishing in the top 10 in the point race, Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. They paid him huge money in the offseason, which could be a mistake if Edmonton wants to pay some players on down the road the next 4 years to win the Cup. So they're really putting all their chips in on McDavid and Draisaitl. So I'm excited to see what the young talents can do.
Yeah, well, I hate to interrupt you guys, but we got to start wrapping things up here. So let's do some rapid-fire predictions, and then let's send it over to our baseball crew, all right? So who's going to win the Hart Trophy this season?
I think you're going to see a repeat from Connor McDavid.
I think Nikita Kucherov of the Tampa Bay Lightning will actually break through with a decent team and win this year's MVP.
All right, and who's going to take home the Vezina Trophy this year?
I think a player who performed well, led his team to the Stanley Cup Final 2 years ago. I think he's going to come back for the San Jose Sharks, Martin Jones. I think he's a very solid goaltender, and Vezina Trophy goes here and there with goaltenders. They get hot for a whole season. And I think Martin Jones is going to win the Vezina Trophy this year.
That's a great pick, and this is one of the toughest awards to pick because any goaltender can come into his own at a good time. Remember Devin Dubnyk from Minnesota a couple of years ago came out of nowhere. I think this is Matt Murray's year to take the Vezina. He's been a great goalie in the postseason, great goalie for the Penguins behind Marc-Andre Fleury. The job is 100% his now. Fleury's in Las Vegas. Vegas Golden Knights will not be a bad team this year. Watch out for them. But now this is Matt Murray's turf, and he's going to reward the Penguins with the Vezina Trophy this year.
I know it's a young season. Pretty hard to decide this already, but what rookie can take home the Calder Trophy already?
You're definitely not seeing the rookies of years past, Connor McDavid, Austin Matthews, Nathan McKinnon.
There's no generational talent coming out of this draft.
There's not. So it's really hard to say now. I'm just... it's up in the air. I might not even make a prediction because these young kids, they need to work on their game more. I don't want to put any pressure on them because I know they probably will be watching this.
Yeah. Oh yeah. A lot of rookies. It really depends on the year and the time, the team they come into with, as to what they might do. Guys like Nico Hischier, first overall, Nolan Patrick, second overall in the NHL draft this year. They may be able to make some noise. You never know. And you can have a young guy come up at any time and make some noise. I don't know that I can make a prediction either. It's just so tough to predict who the best rookie is going to be in the preseason without a generational talent. So,
all right. Well, that's all the time we have for hockey right now, folks. We're going to send it over to our baseball side of the studio where you'll be joined by Elliot and I and Sarah Moltz. That's all the time we have for hockey. Stay tuned for our MLB postseason preview. Thank you.
And welcome back to the Big Hit. I'm here with Jared Brown and Elliot Hicks, and we're ready to talk about some MLB. It starts tonight, as you guys know. Yankees and Twins face off in the American League wild card matchup. Are you guys excited or what?
Yeah,
Can't wait for it. It's all about October.
It is. That's it.
Nothing
Postseason
better.
baseball. That's it.
Nothing better than playoff baseball, exactly.
So, Yankees and Twins, as I mentioned, the winner of that game will go on to face the Cleveland Indians in the best of 5, as we both know. Elliot, who do we have in this matchup and why?
This is easily the New York Yankees. I mean, they have a much better team than the Twins. The Twins did a great job, come from a 100-loss season to make the playoffs. No other team in the MLB has ever done that. But this is still the Yankees easily. Irvin Santana is a good pitcher. We all know that. But Luis Severino definitely has the advantage in this matchup. Aaron Judge has been on fire all season, even though he's slowed a bit after the All-Star break. He still is going to be very good, and he can be an impact player for the Yankees not only in this wild card game, but in the whole postseason when they advance.
I'm going to have to go ahead and disagree with you right away and tell you that the Yankees are not going to beat the Twins. And for one reason. Sure, the Yankees have a better team in maybe a 5-7 game series, but this is one game. And Santana is a better pitcher than Severino. And also, if you just think about Aaron Judge, guess what? The Twins have Sanu on their side too if you need a big home run power hitter. So I think the Twins are going to advance, but it's not going to matter much because whoever runs into the Indians is going down. I think the Indians are too loaded. Kluber and Bauer are two of the most dynamic postseason pitchers I've seen, especially in what they showcased last year. And I'm just really in love with what the Indians outfield has going for them with Chisenhall, Zimmer, and Bruce. So I think the Indians have a strong World Series case, and the Yankees and Twins aren't really going to hold any fire to them.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you with Cleveland there. Remember, Miguel Sano is not going to play in this wild card game, so that's going to be a big.
You're correct. That's my bad.
That's going to be a big issue. He's
bad.
been dealing with injuries, but it's definitely a toss-up as any one-game playoff is.
One and done. I mean,
Yeah,
it's 50-50.
Yeah.
Both teams.
Flip of a coin, and a lot of times even the better team doesn't win, as we saw like in 2015 with the Pirates, 98 games and get knocked off by the Chicago Cubs.
Yeah,
anything can happen in one game.
Who shows up and ready to play?
I mean, home field advantage is definitely a thing as well, I think, and the Yankees do have that right now.
Yeah,
do you think that's going to play a role in this series, home field advantage for the Yankees, or no?
I think,
right now?
I mean,
Or for tonight's game, at least.
In a one-game series, you can only have a limited amount of home field advantage, but Yankee Stadium will be rocking. I think the fans will definitely bring it tonight.
Yeah, it all just depends on the opposing pitcher with home field advantage. If he can handle it, he can handle it, and the crowd's not a factor.
Mm-hmm.
All right, well, let's talk about another team, another lineup. The second seed Houston Astros have a home field advantage against the third seed team, the Boston Red Sox. Good matchup there. Who moves on to the ALCS and why? Elliot?
Yeah, very similarly to, well, I guess Cleveland has more of an advantage over the other teams, but in the rest of the entire MLB playoffs, I think it's more wide open than it's been in years. Houston's had a great team, Jose Altuve right up there in the MVP race. They have a great pitching staff, getting Justin Verlander, absolutely huge acquisition. He's got the postseason experience. And, I mean, I would probably have to take Houston in this one. I think it'll go to 5 games. It'll be a very exciting series. And as exciting as it might be for another possibility of a Boston Yankees ALCS, I don't think that's happening on either side. So I'm going to take Houston in this series in 5 games.
All right.
I'm perfectly okay with that Houston pick. 5 games is fair because I do think it's going to come down to the wire, but I have to disagree with you just because of our longtime Big Hit fans. They know I predicted Boston as my preseason World Series champs, so I have to stick with them. Rick Porcello and Chris Sale, still 2 of the most dangerous pitchers in the league. So you go down 2-0 against a lineup like Boston, and especially with Brock Holt on that team, I love what he does. He's kind of like Josh Harrison for Pirates fans back in 2015 when he made the All-Star game. Throw him anywhere, and he's a flash in the pan and can produce from anywhere in the field. So I think Brock Holt could play a factor, especially in the postseason where you see people coming out of games early because they're tired. Injury, fatigue starts setting in. So 5 games is fair. I don't have a problem with saying the Astros are going to win, but I'm going to have to stick with the Red Sox.
Yeah, that's true. And with Brock Holt, it's almost what might have been for the Pirates because remember, he went to Boston in that Mark Melancon deal. Yeah. But it is always great to have that kind of utility man. And, I mean, the Red Sox pitching can be unstoppable at times. I don't remember if they have David Price healthy or not.
He's not going to be healthy for this series, but he's still possible.
So if they would make it far enough, but I'm still going to have to stick with Houston. I think they'll just be able to edge out those top 2 pitchers. Maybe Porcello or Sale can steal a game just because of their arm, but I still got to go with Houston.
So since our dear Pirates didn't even have a chance of making the postseason, is who we're rooting for, the Boston Red Sox?
No. No,
Okay, all right,
no.
we're waiting for that then. Okay, because you sound a little bit.
No, I'm just sticking with
Red Sox side there.
I'm not a Red Sox
Okay,
fan.
that's
I just
okay.
need to stick with my original pick.
All right, well, that's all good.
At least you have the opportunity to do that. My predictions, I don't remember what I predicted myself, but
Don't
it's
you worry,
probably
we'll
not
get
even
there.
close.
Yeah.
I'll give you a couple more thoughts to think before we get to that question. But let's jump over to the National League wildcard game. As you guys I'm sure know as well, Arizona Diamondbacks are hosting the Colorado Rockies. The winner of that matchup goes to LA to face the Dodgers. So who wins, Elliot?
Arizona. I think
Arizona.
Zach Greinke is going to be starting this game, correct?
Yeah.
So I think, of course, they gave him that mega deal. He hasn't been quite as good this year as he has been in previous Cy Young level campaigns. But this is basically what this game comes down to. Paul Goldschmidt, one of the elite power hitters in the game. He's been underrated for so long. Arizona finally making it back to the postseason. Maybe he can get some of this national notoriety. And even though Colorado's been good, they have guys like Charlie Blackmon. They have a decent young pitching staff. Probably going to be John Gray going in this game for Colorado. Not totally certain about that, but I still have to go with Arizona in this game.
Yeah, I agree with you. Arizona's going to advance on the sole purpose of Zach Greinke. And I know you said he hasn't been on the Cy Young candidate level that he's been on in the past, but if you look at his ERA hasn't gone up that much. It's his wins-loss category that has suffered, mostly going from the Los Angeles Dodgers to the Arizona Diamondbacks. You're going to lose some offensive production. And that being said, Zach Greinke's going to have to run into his old offensive production of the Dodgers. I think the Dodgers are a shoo-in for the NLCS. I do think they were the most exciting team in baseball. I don't think they're the best right now, but I do think they're a shoo-in for the NLCS. I don't think either team being divisional foes getting smacked around by the Dodgers could really take 3 out of 5 games from them when it counts.
Yeah, I would have to agree with you there, even though I haven't been nearly as high on the Dodgers ever since that midsummer slump that they had that maybe kept them from setting the win record of 111. But yeah, I think the Dodgers are definitely the better team in the NL, and they should be a shoe into the NLCS, like you said.
Well, a team that we're surely not going to be rooting for is the Chicago Cubs. They face the Washington Nationals, in the National League Division Series. So who wins this series? Taking Chicago, we taking Nationals. What's the deal here?
I mean, my pick initially was Washington because of they have, again, another great pitching staff, but Max Scherzer had a little bit of a hamstring injury, I believe, over the weekend against the Pirates. And Dusty Baker said himself that could affect the rotation. So that kind of opens up the series a little bit, but I still got to take the Nationals in another 5-game series.
All right.
It's honestly a toss-up. The Cubs, they won the division. They straightened themselves out towards the end of the season to pass the Brewers and get into the postseason. But Lester and Lackey especially have looked very shaky for the Cubs. Their offense, Anthony Rizzo and Chris Bryant kind of, I'm not going to say no names, but they've kind of fell off the map this season. But also, you look at the Nationals, sure, they have a great pitching staff. I know there's the news of Scherzer being a question mark for the first rotation. But the real problem with the Nationals is their bullpen. It is atrocious. So once you get those starting pitchers off the mound, which isn't that hard in October, they've been pitching all year. Most pitchers go 5, 6, 7's a blessing in the postseason. Once you get into that Nationals bullpen, it is a joke. So both teams have question marks going into this postseason. I don't see either of them really being a World Series threat. But if I had to pick, I'm just going to go with the Cubs because they've done it in the Nationals that literally never have.
True, yeah. The Cubs just getting it done last season. A lot of that team has come back. They have that postseason experience.
Yeah.
So they definitely have the advantage, at least in that category.
Oh, I completely agree. I think the Cubs definitely have the postseason advantage, as you said, so I think that will help them a lot, especially during this time. All right, gentlemen, this is my favorite part, predictions. All right, what is your World Series matchup and who wins? So first, give me a World Series matchup, and then we'll talk about who wins. Elliot?
All right, I'm going to have to go with Cleveland out of the American League and the Washington Nationals in the NL.
All right, so he has Cleveland, and who did you say again?
Nationals.
Nationals, excuse me. And Jared?
I'm going to have to go with the Dodgers out of the NL and Boston out of the American League.
All right, so we have 4 different teams here. All right, Elliot, out of those 2, who's winning?
I think the Cleveland Indians will finally get it done this year. They came so close last year, blowing the 3-1 lead, becoming the joke of every sports fan everywhere almost. I think with that pitching staff, great lineup, trades they made at the trade deadline, this is the year they're going to get it done.
All right, so Elliot thinks that the Indians are coming back for revenge and taking it all. You have 2 different teams, so what do you think?
I think it's going to be Boston. I'm still going to stick with my preseason pick. Their lineup continues to always impress me, as Boston's lineup always has and always will. But their pitching staff is really what I think improved them. Sure, they went out and bought Chris Sale. They pretty much bought a World Series when they acquired Chris Sales. David Price went down, but I still think they could get it done with 2-star pitchers like they were supposed to do last year, even though they couldn't.
All right. Well, I'm going to have to go with the Indians as well. I think they're going to face the Nationals. But you guys are our MLB experts, so we are all across the board here. And I'm super excited to head into the postseason tonight, like I said, with our first game being Yankees and Twins. I believe at what, 8 o'clock? We said 8 o'clock, so we're going to hurry up and get the show done so we can watch it very, very soon. Well, thank you so much for being here, gentlemen, for Jared and Elliot. That was our MLB segment. And that will be the end of our show today. Thank you so much for watching The Big Hit. For producers, Izzy Muhammad and Jared Brown. And for our director, Darnell Turner. This is The Big Hit, the only sports talk show that really matters. Catch us next week.